Hello, kids. I'm Gareth. This is the Somewhere on Earth podcast. It's Tuesday, the 13th of August, 2024. And we're in our studio in London, which is always a nice place to be. And with us today is the excellent Ghislaine Boddington for some expert commentary. And Ghislaine, how are things? You look well.
Oh, thank you.
It's always a start.
Well, I am fine. I'm just waiting to go on holiday, and I really need it. So I've been wrapping up a lot of work, and I've been thinking a lot about the item we did on digital forms, which was a few months ago now.
And as you know, one of my favourite subjects. Well, everyone goes boring. But
I know, but it's become fascinating, hasn't it? And now I've just been filling in digital form after digital form after digital form for university, for this, for that. And all the time I'm thinking about that item we did, which was so fascinating. Yeah, we did think it was going to be boring, and it wasn't. It was really great.
Because it's how we interface with all these institutions in our lives, isn't it? What could be more important?
How they make you feel stupid or unable to do it, or even some of them, like we said in the show, that make you feel like, well, are they trying to? Do I have to prove I'm not a criminal? Yeah, you know, these kind of very weird things that happen within forms, which are pushing you in different directions to feel more and more annoyed and angry until you're like feel utterly daft and like it must be me. You know, it's like.
Yeah, so. I'm glad, obviously not for you, but for me, that you turn it back on yourself, because I do as well. I just think, I must be an idiot. You know, I didn't realise you were meant to put the postcode in without a space. How stupid am I?
I know. It's very hard.
There we are.
So I do keep recommending people to listen to that one, podcast one we did, including all the people in my university who make those forms.
Yes, that's very important. Yeah, that's the thing. That's the intended audience. It's people who actually create these blessed things. They're the ones who need to tune into this and take note. But Ghislaine, thank you for that. That's actually really made my day, that whole conversation. I know, I'm funny. All right, let's jump in. And coming up today, we're focusing on internet shutdowns in this edition, specifically in two parts of the world. In Venezuela, there's political unrest following President Maduro's contested re-election. Amid calls for a mass protest this weekend, services like X, formerly Twitter, are disrupted. Elsewhere in the world, the government's taken down the internet in the tiny island province of Annobon in Equatorial Guinea. We'll be talking about all of that right here on the Somewhere on Earth podcast. First then to Equatorial Guinea, where the internet has gone dark in that province there of Annobon. People there have been demonstrating over environmental and human rights abuses by the government. And the government basically is retaliating by saying, well, in that case, we're just going to switch off your connectivity. Digital rights activists are calling on the Equatorial Guinean government to reinstate internet access. Well, Anya, you've been following this very closely, haven't you? Producer Anya Literovich in the studio with us, by the way. So what do we need to know?
Well, on July the 20th this year, the government of Equatorial Guinea cut off the island of Annobon from the internet, as you said, leading to a cellular blackout. This was following the demonstrations against environmental exploitation. There have been reports of government security forces conducting arrests and even seizing mobile phones from people, would you believe? So this was after dozens of residents peacefully demonstrated in the city of San Antonio de Pale against the harmful impact of dynamite explosions linked to ongoing mining operations on the island. Now, on August the 2nd, the government reportedly banned the sale and use of unauthorised internet satellite services and equipment. On August the 5th, it ordered satellite internet provider Starlink to immediately suspend its services for all kits located in the country and to seek a licence. Annobon is a province of Equatorial Guinea. It consists of the island of Annobon and a group of islets in the Gulf of Guinea. It's the smallest province in the country in both area and population. And according to the last census in 2015, it had a population of 5,314. Now, there's been a long history of the population suffering from marginalisation, exploitation and human rights abuses there. The island is also a biodiversity hotspot with a natural protected reserve that is under threat, including from large-scale dumping of toxic waste on the island and surrounding waters.
So why has all this come to the attention of people outside the country now? Especially, Anya, as we're talking about this tiny province. I've looked it up and it's this little island, isn't it? Just off the...
You can't see it's
mainland,
there on most
as
maps.
islands are. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you've got this large, relatively large landmass of Equatorial Guinea, and then out in the Gulf of Guinea, as you say, the small island. Anyway, so why now, really?
Well, Access Now, who we're also going to be hearing from about the situation in Venezuela, have issued a statement about the situation. Now, this has been signed by more than 40 organisations from the Keep It On Coalition. Now, Access Now and the Keep It On Coalition are calling on authorities in Equatorial Guinea to immediately restore internet and telecommunications services in Annobon. According to the statement, the disconnection of communication services is the latest in a series of repressive acts by the government of Teodoro Obiang Nguema Mnasogo, who has maintained a tight grip on the country since 1979. It's not the first time that Annobon has experienced internet shutdowns at the hand of the government, and only a few months ago, in May 2024, it joined the Unrepresented Nations and Peoples Organization, UNPO, and they have issued a statement denouncing the arbitrary detention and torture of the inhabitants by the regime, in addition to the militarization of the island and the confiscation of mobile phones. UNPO joined the urgent call for the international community to intervene and address the humanitarian crisis.
Just looking at the map and seeing this small island, it occurred to me, Anya, that its connectivity must be a challenge there at the best of times anyway. So how easy is it to get online? And we're talking about Annobon, the little province, but also just generally in mainland Equatorial Guinea.
Well, what I've looked at is price, and that is quite significant. Now, according to the Statista website, 1 gigabyte of mobile internet in Equatorial Guinea cost, on average, $1 US 59 cents in 2023. That's one of the highest prices for mobile data in Africa. Out of 15 data plans measured in the country, lowest price was $1 US 17 cents for 1 gigabyte for 30 days. Most expensive plan for 1 gigabyte was $1.69 cents. Now, you compare that, like today I was actually looking at changing mobile phone provider for my daughters, and I was able to find deals in the UK at less than $1 a month for 3 gigabytes of data. So that kind of gives you a comparison.
And especially if you take into account the disparity in earnings and income between
Absolutely.
a country like the UK and Equatorial Guinea. My goodness. All right. Anya, thank you. So Glenn is listening intently to all that then. So it's kind of inevitable, Glenn, I'm afraid, but still rather depressing that we sit around this table and talk about internet shutdowns.
It is, isn't it? And actually, we know from covering this issue in this show and others previously, it's getting worse. Yeah, it's getting worse. And we know that a lot happened in India this year, particularly around the issues around the election. We know that more and more are happening around elections. We're seeing the situation being brought up, like, oh, do you think they're going to do an internet shutdown? It's starting to come into the queries now at a more mass level, I think, yeah. And I even got asked it about Britain the other day. Will the new Prime Minister actually shut down the internet with what's happening in our own unrest situation, which we'll talk about later.
We had far-right riots in this country.
Far-right riots this last few weeks. And we're just going to talk about Venezuela as well. So I think we've got a very big tipping point in how the internet's being used. We know socially, the social media side is full of this disinformation, misinformation, even though we know still also that it's incredibly good for many, many reasons, educational, etc. So
yeah, and
it's depressing though.
It certainly is, and clearly for many governments, they will just see, in many regimes, that there's an economic cost, of course, to a shutdown, but they will see that as a price worth paying to silence dissent in whichever country it might be. So.
Yes.
Okay, look, well, Glenn, you mentioned Venezuela there. And so according to the NetBlocks Observatory that follows all these shutdowns, X, formerly Twitter, is restricted now in Venezuela as contested President Maduro orders the platform to be banned for 10 days, claiming that the platform X is promoting civil war. The messaging platform Signal also appears to be partially banned, certainly the last data that I looked at before we came to the studio. Let's hear a bit more now from Marianne Diaz Hernandez, who is #YID campaigner at Access Now. Thanks for joining us, Marianne. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Lovely. So can we just get a sense of what is happening in Venezuela, what the restrictions are?
Well, as you mentioned, Maduro ordered the blocking of Twitter a few days ago, on Thursday. I have the dates right here. Maduro ordered the blocking of Twitter on August 11. He had already expressed his intention to either regulate or block social media in general. He mentioned TikTok, he mentioned Instagram, and also Twitter. And he accused these apps of being, quote unquote, the main instrument to increase hatred and fascism in the country. Those are his words, not mine. And then what happened was that as Twitter started being implemented the blocking, several other services went down. Some things had already happened before, like Reddit being blocked, Signal starting to experience difficulties with Signal's website, and also the websites of VPNs such as Proton and Tonalver being unavailable, so that doesn't stop the VPNs from being used per se, but it makes it more difficult for people to download the apps without being able to access the website, particularly for desktop. And so when the blocking of Twitter was implemented, we found that some other places were also unavailable, like Disney Plus and HBO Max and Mercado Libre, which is a sort of Amazon-like site that's popular in Latin America, Binance, all of Microsoft domains. So Teams, for instance, was unavailable. And some of this was later explained by further research conducted by local NGOs, by learning that the entirety of AWS CloudFront is blocked in Venezuela. So this is affecting a large number of online sites, particularly those that are using CloudFront to handle large amounts of traffic. That is on that side. And then there are other developments on the legal and political aspect, which is that yesterday the Maduro government, they gave some statements accusing TikTok now from wanting to start a civil war. So we can probably see TikTok blocked in the upcoming days. And they are working on, like today, they're having a discussion at the Congress, which is controlled by Maduro's government, on cyber terrorism and the rise of digital fascism, which is a very, very interesting concept, I might say. Maybe someone who is not Venezuelan might find them more interesting.
Right. Well, we can do that because Glenn is here in the studio, and Glenn, we're just seeing so much of this misuse of social media worldwide, aren't we? You know, so you got the aspect of the shutdowns, but then also when social media is available, all kinds of nefarious actors doing bad things on social media, intending to create certain harms or to achieve certain outcomes. So you're interested in this, aren't you?
No, definitely. And I think the kind of, I don't think the word irony is the right word, but it is quite an irony where in one country, in Venezuela at the moment, for example, the shutting down of Twitter is a problem because people can't stay in touch and keep going. And in another country like the UK, we're not shutting down Twitter, but actually, Twitter is causing part of the problem, yeah? Because this whole issue around misinformation, disinformation, which leads and goads people into, online threats and racist trolling and leading to physical threats and this kind of harassment and then even to physical injury, because we've had these UK riots in the last two or 3 weeks. And it is, fairly clear, it's become fairly clear with a lot of verification and sources being checked that the kind of call to action was often incited by the misuse of social media by far-right groups, and including X, of course, but actually other scenarios too. It did start with a lie, that social media thing. They've absolutely clarified that. It wasn't a Muslim guy that did the murdering of 3 young girls. It wasn't,
And let's just explain that for people outside the UK or who may not be familiar with this. But 3 young girls were horrifically murdered while they were attending like a summer holiday dance class, a school holiday dance class. And then rumours went around the internet through social media that the perpetrator was a Muslim and somebody who had illegally entered the UK on a small boat crossing from the European continent. So just to pick up then, Ghislaine, that was
it was fake.
The catalyst, and so
name.
that these reports of this being a kind of Muslim asylum seeker were fake.
It pushed a lot of people into riots and street violences in many cities and towns in England and Northern Ireland. But what I think is really interesting about this, because we're looking at the irony of these being different uses in different countries, but basically it comes down to pinpointing what the other is, that actually otherness being seen as a negative, rather than what we know is that otherness is difference, and that's a very, very positive part of the world and why we get so much joy from the world, different culturally, different gender-wise, different racially. I mean, imagine if we were all the same. I mean, so I think that we are having the creation of an us and them scenario that's happening in many places, either way, right, left, it doesn't really matter actually on the politics, but it's us and them. And they're useful, if it's useful for your election campaign or to gain votes, it's that rhetoric that's being used and often is seemingly now leading to violence, physical violence.
Throw that into the explosive echo chamber that is social media and people believing what they want to read and then sharing and amplifying, and a lot of stuff that we've discussed on this podcast. Mariam, back to you then. How are people in Venezuela, if they are able to, getting round some of these restrictions that you've mentioned? I mean, maybe VPNs, but you said that even a number of VPN sites have been taken down as well. So are people finding other means of getting online?
I mean, yes and no. It depends a lot on many factors, such as the level of familiarity with technology that people has and just the internet quality, because sometimes when internet is very poor, then VPNs do not help you connect. But we have been fighting against censorship for 15 years now, so there is a lot more familiarity in Venezuela with the concept of what a VPN is and the concept of circumventing censorship by, for instance, changing DNS in your computer. Than in other countries that I have worked with.
And sorry, just to interrupt you then, you said changing the DNS in your computer. This is your DNS entry on the internet. It sounds a little bit technical for people who don't do this all the time. I mean, just briefly, can you explain what that means then, going in and fiddling with the DNS settings?
Yeah, sure. It mainly means that if the blocking is a DNS type of blocking, which is one of the many types of blocking that a government might implement, it is what we are facing right now. It is not the only type that we have faced in the past, but it is what we have. That's the easy one. That's the one you can circumvent through a VPN. And why? It is because the DNS, which is the domain of the site that you're trying to access, is like a phone number in a phone book, if someone can imagine an old phone book. And then you're calling that number and the number is unavailable. And changing the DNS is basically changing the book that you're trying to call to reach the same place. So finding another way around it, calling a different number. And so we are familiar with that. You go through a setting. It is it's not that difficult, but it requires some guidance. And we have developed, as many other countries have, we have developed some guides to help people go through that, and also to help them install VPNs, which is just another way of doing that, like And as in the tunnel bear animation when you enter, right? It's a bear digging a tunnel to exit through somewhere else, trying to access from a different location or calling to a different number.
Wow, it's all ingenious and necessary, clearly, given the context. So you're with Access Now, so you're a digital rights campaigning group. What are you calling for?
Oh, wow.
Where do we start? I know you have a lot of things that very much concern you, but in the Venezuelan context, and are you making certain recommendations, or could I put it more strongly and even say demands or requests?
We released an open letter on technology-enabled political violence on Monday, where up to 200 individuals and organizations are calling with us to ending the use of technological tools and digital platforms for the surveillance and persecution of political dissent, but specifically in the wake of elections. This is a system that has been created during 20 years. They have been creating the system. They are now using the entirety of the weight of the system against opposition, against civil society. And so it has several aspects. So as I was mentioning, censorship and filtering is one of them. The other one that I was thinking as you were talking is harassment, because at the same time that they are blocking social media, the government itself is using social media to harass and dox people. And this is happening offline, like they are marking houses with big X's, yes. And it's happening online. They're using their social media accounts to spread videos and images of people that they want to chase and disappear and all sort of things. So, and they're using specific apps as well for this, other than Instagram, Telegram, and Twitter itself. And there's also surveillance. And for me, that I work on identification and digital ID, one of the things that are a big worry for my campaign right now is that passports are being annulled by the thousands. We have found that I don't know how many, and we cannot know the number, but there are many human rights defenders and journalists have had their passports annulled in the past couple of weeks. And if they try to exit the country, they are arrested at the airport, and if they try to go to an office to learn what happened to their passport, they are taken by the military. So
they're being trapped effectively, aren't they?
Yes, that is the point, that they cannot move, information cannot go out, people cannot go out. That is the entire point. It's a control system. So what we're calling, of course, on Maduro's government to cease using and abusing technologies in these ways. The full explanation is on the letter. It's 5 pages long. But we're also calling, I think, very importantly, on international organizations and international communities and countries that are in communication with this government to strongly condemn these violations of human rights, specifically the use and abuse of technological tools for it, because it is the abuse of human rights is happening and technological tools are amplifying it. That is what's happening, right? They are not the origin of the violence. They are the origin of censorship. They are the way of amplifying and strengthening that harassment. So we are urging the international community to strongly condemn these violations, to tell them that this is not acceptable because this is not within international law. And of course, Venezuela is not really obeying the law at this point, but it is important to create that pressure around it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, we'll leave it there for this part of the podcast, but we'd love it if you can stay on and talk to us just for a few more minutes in our podcast extra. But thank you very much for joining us for that. By the way, people who want to read the statement from Access Now, it's on the website, isn't it? accessnow.org. It's really easy to find under the Take Action part of the website, and it's available in Spanish as well. Joining us from Access Now, that's Marianne Diaz-Hernandez. And also, of course, here in the studio, we have editor and producer Anya Liktorovich and Glenn Boddington. And over there doing sound, we have the excellent Dylan, who's he's giving us a little wave there through the glass. Our production manager is Liz Tiri, and I'm Gareth. There we are. Got through all the credits there. most credit, of course, to you, dear listener, for being with us. And if you can't join us for the subscription episode, of course, we'll see you in the next edition. Thanks so much for being with us. It means a lot. Take care of yourselves, folks. Speak soon. Bye-bye.